Hey, where's the freaking gabagool?
Yeah, man, I don't know if I'm quite ready for your banter yet. It was just such a sudden change from you like admonishing me to then being like, "Hey, man, it's just two buddies just having a good time talking.
Make better choices
the way that we do."
Yeah. All right, dude. That Amaral's Caserla was very, very good.
Yeah, I'm sure.
It was very good.
Yeah, I'm sure it was really good.
With a little peri peri on it, and then some cheddar cheese. Oh.
Mm-hmm.
Epa.
Yeah. Real good stuff.
All right, so what's going on?
Not much. What's up with you?
Same old.
Yeah?
Cat is... this kitty, I literally just got home. So he's probably going to join us at times with his own little quips.
Well, that sounds good.
Yep. Are your neighbors still talking outside?
No. They were like throwing stuff out the window onto the ground and
What?
Yeah, I think there's like some sort of like a home renovation in progress. And
okay. Oh, so it's not like an argument.
No. And then somebody was like, "Hey, you still doing the thing?" And the guy was like, "Yeah, still doing it." And that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're good to go.
Cool. Well, welcome everybody to another riveting episode of the Left Unread podcast.
Yeah, I hope it's riveting because I got to tell you, I'm feeling like we're off to a pretty uninspiring start here. So let's see what you've got for us.
Yeah. So for today's episode, I decided to take a break from my ongoing History of the Kings of Britain series. For really just mainly because I'm getting sick of reading that book.
Sure, I don't blame you.
Yeah, so for this episode, we are traveling to Peru, and we'll be talking about the 2021 election that's going on right now, where they've already had one round of voting, and there will be another one in a few weeks. And then we're going to take a step back and look at kind of what got the country there in the first place, and how much of it, the United States played a part in. So before all that, though, do we have an advertisement for tonight?
Yeah, we do. So tonight, it's kind of cool. I'm excited. We've got our first listener-sponsored episode, which I think is really exciting. We received an offer from listener Bill M. from Ypsilanti, Michigan, to fund our research entirely for the week if we were willing to broadcast a message that he wrote unabridged and in its entirety, which is not something that we've done before, but he made us a really nice offer. So as I'm sure you guys have gathered, that the show takes an absolutely immense amount of time and brain power to create, which leads to us having a pretty sizable weekly seltzer bill. So we graciously accepted his monetary remuneration in exchange for reading this letter. His one condition in his email was that we have to read the message in its entirety, and we can't I wasn't allowed to read the message ahead of time because he was worried that I wouldn't read it.
Okay.
And
Sounds
so,
promising.
Yeah, a breach of any of these things would mean that we don't get any of our money. And if we don't broadcast it in full, like if I edit it, then we also don't get any money. So, whatever, that seems fair enough. I can't imagine that he's got anything lined up that would be, too offensive.
I could not imagine that. Could not possibly.
And if it's bad enough, I guess we'll just say no to the money. But I'd really like the money, so
Okay.
All right, so here it goes. It's from Bill M. from Ypsilanti, Michigan. First of all, Evan and Cam, I love the show. We're off to a good start. Thanks, Bill. Which is why I hate to have to broadcast this message through you guys, but you were the only show small and desperate enough to be willing to follow through with it.
I'm not sure if we're desperate, but... Okay, Bill.
Jesse, baby, if you're listening, I'm having the boys read this message to say I'm sorry. For all of it. I never should have did what I did, and I just want you to know that if I could take it all back, I would in a heartbeat. Now, this seems like well-intentioned enough. Firstly, I'd just like to say that I did not know you didn't like role play in the bedroom. I know you say I never listen, but I honestly feel like I would have remembered if you'd said that before. Okay. Really, how was I supposed to know I wasn't supposed to wear your dad's old firefighter clothes? They're just sitting up in that dusty box upstairs, and it never even occurred to me that you'd be that upset. I mean, I know it. Oh, geez. I know it hasn't been that long since he passed, but if anything, I thought you'd appreciate his gear getting some use. And frankly, I think the idea of climbing in the upstairs window at night and hammering the door down with the axe was a really creative touch. Frankly, I'm surprised you didn't realize it was me sooner. I mean, the face mask isn't that hard to see through. Man, I really hope this ends well, because we need that seltzer money. And lastly, it's not like I intentionally pretended to be him or anything. All I said was, sweetie, it's me. I've missed you so much. Which was true, by the way, and you assumed that I was his ghost. I didn't even make you call me his name. I just nicely asked the one time. Jesus Christ, dude. Anyway, I hope you can forgive me and that someday soon you will take me back. I think this is worth discussing, and I don't think you should throw the uniform out. Honestly, your dad is a hero for saving those people, and once we get the smell of smoke out, I think it would be nice to have as a memento. Love you, baby. Yours always, Billy.
Thanks, Bill.
All right, so I guess...
Well, they sound like big fans, that we're on name status of the boys to them.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm going to have to do some thinking about this one. I don't know if it's right to... Well,
listen, I just bought 2 6-packs of that nice Portuguese mineral water.
Well, that's the problem, man. You're out here buying 6-packs. You're spending your money unwisely.
They only sell them in 6-packs.
Well, then maybe you need to think about buying something different.
I need the Portuguese mineral water.
I can't imagine Portuguese minerals make that much of a difference. What do they make your mustache growing stronger and nothing else?
I mean, if they are, it's working, right?
Yeah. Anyway, we'll talk after the recording about whether or not we're going to air this. But for what it's worth, I hope that they figure it out, because that seems
I hope everything works out, Bill.
Yeah, that seems like a pretty serious breach of trust. So,
listen, I think he was in the right. Anyway, so moving on to the actual topic at hand.
Yeah.
So as I said in the intro, we'll be talking today about Alberto Fujimori and his daughter Keiko Fujimori, who is running against Pedro Castillo in Peru. But first, I just want to give a little bit of background, really exactly as to why I'm talking about this right now. So I'm planning on starting a very long series, and not contiguous, but there'll be a lot of episodes involved in it, which is going to be about the United States' global involvement after World War II, mainly in the period from 1945 to 1990. So people generally think of this period as the Cold War, but I find that name far too cute and not actually descriptive of what went on. So while the conflict itself mainly avoided the United States and the Soviet Union, The war was not cold in countries throughout the global south, mainly in Latin America and Southeast Asia. I think it's far more apt to think of this as World War III, with millions globally dying as America attempted not to fight against communism, but rather for neocolonialism, as America exported slave labor to anti-democratic military and fascist dictatorships in the global south so they could retain hegemony over the natural resources of the post-colonial world. Communism itself was never the threat, and some Soviet designs on world domination were both utterly unfounded and contrived. The CIA was aware by at least the mid-70s that the Soviet Union was already collapsing, and Joseph Stalin's socialism in one country ideology and appeasement stance to the United States post-World War II made the Soviets' desires patently obvious. The problem with communism was that it was an avenue for countries once dominated by Western European empires to take control over their destinies, and, the real cardinal sin, at least in Washington's eyes, take control over their natural resources and use these for the benefit of their own people. It was Washington, not Moscow, that was hell-bent on world domination, and Washington was willing to use all manner of subterfuge, regime change, assassination, sabotage, and outright mass murder on a genocidal level to achieve its goals. So I will begin this series with two South American countries and their modern politics today before I double back to the beginning. I'm starting at the epilogue to show you that this war did not end in 1990. The events of the American century have directly shaped the world we live in today, and the peoples of the countries most affected are still under the repressive thumb of this American order that was created. So first up is Peru, and let's start here in 2021 with their presidential elections.
Okay.
So the 2021 Peruvian election will see a runoff vote on June 6th between two candidates on either end of the spectrum. Keiko Fujimori, the former First Lady of Peru, former Congresswoman representing Lima, and the daughter of former President Alberto Fujimori, for whom she served as First Lady after her mother, Susanna Higuchi, who was stripped of the title for speaking out against her husband as a tyrant in 1994.
That's a great start.
Yeah.
if your own wife is like, you know what, honestly, man, I
This is
can't
too
stand
far.
this any longer. I got to tell him, you're not a nice guy.
Yeah.
And then for
your
the
daughter's
daughter to
like,
turn around and be like,
all right,
fuck
get the
you,
fuck
Mom.
out of here, Mom.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. So,
Do you think she took on all of the First Lady's duties?
I sincerely hope not, and I also am not going to try to even entertain that.
Okay.
So Keiko leads her own party, which is called the Fuerza Popular, and she unsuccessfully ran her at the top of the ticket for president in both 2011 and 2016. The party runs as a Fujimorist and neoliberal party based on the cult of personality surrounding former president, her father, Alberto Fujimori. And that will see her go up against Pedro Castillo, who is a school teacher and union leader born to illiterate peasants from Cajamarca, one of the poorest regions of Peru, and who spent his youth defending against the Maoist revolutionaries' shining path. So, Maoist is, in case you are unaware, Mao Zedong was the paramount leader and chairman of the People's Republic of China, and he considered himself and his interpretation of Marxism-Leninism to be the true successor to Stalin, as opposed to somebody we talked about recently, Nikita Khrushchev, who led the Soviet Union. Maoism would be really hugely popular with a lot of communist insurgent groups in other countries, and Peru had their own called the Shining Path. So Castillo came to prominence as a teachers' union leader during the 2017 strike that was a part of the political crisis in the country.
Fucking teachers, man. It's like, I feel like teachers have had it too good for too long, and they really just need to understand, like, no one fucking cares what you guys think.
Anybody could do it.
Anyone can do it, honestly. I feel like I teach people shit all the time.
Yeah.
Like I was teaching you earlier, like before this, I was teaching you like how to act and just like be a normal dude. And I feel like that's working out pretty well. You were pretty receptive to that today.
Yep.
Evan's lessons have been coming along really great, folks. Pretty soon we'll have him using a fork and a knife when he eats.
No, don't bet on that. So anyway, Castillo is at the top of the ticket for the Peru Libre Party, a socialist party on the country's left wing.
That means free Peru.
Yep, that means free Peru. Yeah. And Fuerza Popular means
popular force.
Popular force, yes. So of course, being that this is not the United States, a socialist party is simply considered left wing and not far left. Where, here in the United States, even mild social democracy, which is just capitalism with a heavy welfare state, even that's considered far left.
Yeah, man, that's like this country has moved so far to the right in recent years that the public discourse about even like the simplest amount of like publicly funded aid for American citizens is just like lambasted into the ground as like complete total communists. Like
I mean, dude, like even like Bernie Sanders, which he's definitely a socialist, but like all of his policies are just mild social democracy.
Yeah,
like those are still capitalist policies, and really, at the end of the day, those policies do nothing if not protect capitalism from its most like self-destructive tendencies. But even like saying that things that like public college should be tuition free is considered to be like far left in this country. When that's like, even the fact that we have to argue for that is like insane for
in most developed countries of the world, these things are sort of foregone conclusions, and we're over here still just debating like whether or not we've got like a gun problem, and we can't even move on to like social betterment because we're too busy just scrabbling for our things.
Yeah, but so socialism for most of the rest of the world, that's just considered left wing. That's not like far left.
Right.
Far left would be like communist insurgents like Shining Path, like forced possession takeover or property takeover for the working class. So Castillo, while himself is a socialist, he's actually kind of funny because he does have largely socially conservative views. So it's really economically he's left wing, but he's conservative. Other than that,
is Peru like a heavily Catholic country?
I
mean, my guess would be
mainly Catholic.
I feel like lots of Latin
Catholic.
America falls under that purview, and that might have some sway over his ideological beliefs. Because I mean, a lot of like economically and socially like socialist policies are sort of in keeping with like traditional Christian tenets, helping each other out and loving thy neighbor. But then you enter into certain other territory where they're like, but I don't love every neighbor.
Yeah. Yeah, and I believe there is some Protestantism, but it is more Catholic.
Yeah.
But yeah, so he does have some socially conservative views. For instance, he opposes same-sex marriage. He also opposes legalization of abortion. So his socialist values extend to government programs and foreign policy. He supports nationalizing key industries like mining, oil, and gas. And although his economic policy is what's called market socialism, which means that there's room for private industry. You can have things like the profit motive. It's not planned economy. So planned economy would be onto the farther side of socialism than communism.
Right.
So Castillo also claims he would expel the largest drug cartel on earth, the United States DEA, from the country. So
sounds about right. I mean, you can't really argue with that.
Yeah, they are.
I think that by now, hopefully, most people don't have any illusions that the DEA is like some benevolent organization designed to protect the masses from the evils of drug abuse.
Yeah, they've got the drug dealers that they like, and those drug dealers stay in power because they help the United States get the other drug dealers that they don't like, that won't play ball.
Right, right.
They're very good at playing both sides against each other.
Absolutely.
So that they always come out on top.
Yeah, no, the U.S. loves when drug dealers are willing to play ball with us.
Yeah,
I mean, like, why do you think we invaded Afghanistan?
Yeah.
There's nothing there.
The biggest heroin pushers on earth.
All they've got is fucking poppies, CIA.
Man. Yeah, exactly.
That's it.
There's two things Afghanistan has: a border with Iran and poppy fields.
That's literally it. And I mean, that border's nice, deposits. But that border doesn't make any money, so...
Yeah.
Anyway.
You guess who else borders Iran? Iraq. Interesting. Anyway. So the first round of the election was held on the 11th of April, and it saw Pedro Castillo come out of nowhere to finish first with nearly 20% of the vote in a crowded field. So I was kind of following this at the time, and Pedro, like, he literally came out of fucking nowhere. Like, he was barely polling in the single digits just, like, 2 weeks before the election. It shocked everybody that he came out on top in the first round. And who came out second but Keiko Fujimori? And rounding out the top five were Rafael Lopez Aliaga, Hernando de Soto, and Johnny Lescano, all three representing liberal parties, both on the center-right and right of the political spectrum.
That's so funny. Just the name Hernando de Soto, which is like the famous conquistador.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's all.
Oh, dude, there are some awesome names in this story. But so here when I say they're liberal parties, I'm using this in the sense of, like, the term liberal democracy, not in terms of the American usage, which broadly describes the Democratic Party. Economic liberalism is kind of like a right ideology.
Mm-hmm.
So, both the Democratic and Republican parties in the U.S. are liberal parties, with the Democrats generally representing the center to the center-right on the spectrum, and Republicans being right to far-right. I know, there are some social democrats and nominal socialists in the party, but, by and large, they're mainly center-right.
Yeah.
Now, due to this result, Pedro Castillo and Keiko Fujimori will be going head-to-head in a runoff election. So let's go back to where Keiko comes from. So she is the daughter of Alberto Fujimori, who is the son of Japanese immigrants to the Latin American nation. So there's a sizable population of Peruvians of Japanese descent, as it was the first Latin American country to establish diplomatic relations with Japan in 1873, and it was subsequently the first Latin American nation to accept Japanese immigrants. Over 1% of the population of Peru is Japanese.
So, really quick, just to dive in, if you guys are trying to look up Alberto Fujimori, it's the Japanese name Fujimori, but obviously because he is Latin American culturally, they pronounce it Fujimori. Also, the history of Japanese immigrants to South America in general is really, really interesting. And you guys should absolutely look more into that, because there are tons and tons and tons of cool examples. I mean, everything from politics to, like, Brazilian jiu-jitsu and, everything in between. There's, like, a huge cultural influx of Japanese immigrants to greater South America, and there's a lot of cool history there. I mean, I'm sure we'll touch on it again at some point. But
there's, like, really cool. There's, like, parts of, like, Sao Paulo in Brazil that are, like, heavily Japanese influenced, and, like, so they're, like, really, like, big baseball neighborhoods and stuff like that, which, you don't really have baseball anywhere else.
Yeah.
In Brazil for the most part. So, it's very cool. But, so Alberto was born in 1938 in Lima to Mutsue and Neoichi Fujimori, who were natives from Kumamoto on the island of Kyushu. They moved to Peru in 1934. Now, there was apparently some birtherism controversy in the 90s about Alberto possibly having been born in Japan, but this seems to be mostly unsubstantiated.
I want to see his birth certificate.
Yeah.
I want proof.
Yeah. So Peruvian presidents, like in the U.S., must be born in the country that they serve.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Alberto was married to another Japanese Peruvian, Susana Iguchi. While his parents were Buddhist, Alberto himself was raised Roman Catholic, and he's fluent in both Spanish and Japanese.
That's crazy. So his parents were just like, no, man, you're going to be a Catholic. Or did he, like... Did he take that upon himself, or like?
No, he was raised. They raised him from infancy.
Like, just so he would fit in?
They gave him the Hispanic name too, Alberto.
Wow.
But so he received a degree in agronomic engineering from the National Agrarian University in Lima, and then studied abroad for grad school, first at the University of Wisconsin, and then at the University of Strasbourg in France.
Damn, he was a Badger. Is that what it is? The Badgers?
I think so, right?
University of Wisconsin
Badgers.
Badgers? Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah. But so in the late 80s, Fujimori hosted a television show named Concertando, which examined environmental and agrarian issues. So he ran for president in the 1990 election as the head of his own party, Campeón 90, using grassroots support and populist rhetoric. The outgoing president, Alan Garcia, was unpopular, and the major opponent for Alberto was the conservative novelist Mario Vargas Llosa. Fujimori, who was called El Chino during the election, which, part of my language, essentially means the Chinaman, although it was used both derogatorily and affectionately.
Yeah.
Like at the same time.
Yeah.
He won the election with 56.6% of the vote, and while he campaigned criticizing Llosa's proposal for economic shock doctrine, he would go on to be more conservative than even his opponent.
Yeah, it's almost like he was saying what he needed to say to get in, and then...
Oh, well, also, certain people that he met with told him what he needed to do.
Absolutely. I love the trend of TV actors getting elected to high office and then finding out that they have some degree of ability to perform and manipulate an audience into getting what they want. And then everybody's like, what? Like, I never would have seen this coming. How did he dupe us all? That's his whole gig, man.
Yeah. Well, he met with certain people that were like, no, this is what the fuck you're going to do.
Just say this.
Oh, guess who was? George H.W. Bush. Who made a big career out of doing that.
Fuck yeah.
And if you didn't, he would just, fucking kill you. But, so, in case you don't know one of those terms I just said, it's economic shock doctrine. So, just very briefly, the major type of economic policy and the post-World War II order, up until, like, the late 70s in the United States, although there were test runs elsewhere, like Augusto Pinochet, but it was called Keynesian Economics. And some perverts from the University of Chicago came up with this idea, like, what if we just deregulate everything? Mm-hmm. And more or less that became neoliberalism. And one of the ways that this would often be instituted, including to great devastation in the countries of the former Soviet Union, is called shock doctrine, where you just pull the rug out and just, like, deregulate like crazy. And you basically just shock the system with, like, free market economics.
Right. And that totally doesn't lead to just, like, psychotic oligarchs opportunistically dominating the economy and seizing huge amounts of power for themselves. That doesn't happen. Don't worry.
Yeah, I mean, so for instance, and I will be talking about him in a future episode, this is what the United States did when they couped Salvador Allende in Chile, and they instituted his, like, former general Augusto Pinochet, and they instituted shock doctrine where they just got rid of all of the democratic socialism Allende was doing and just shocked the fucking shit out of the system. They also did this in the Soviet Union, which saw the greatest, like one of the greatest drops in average life expectancy in, like, the modern world.
That rocks, dude.
Yeah. Just so you can get that.
Are you guys shocked?
That cheddar, dude.
Shocked you. Gotcha.
Yep. So once in office, Fujimori immediately instituted neoliberal economic shock, and this was affectionately, I guess, known as Fuji shock.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That's like a
Fuji shock.
That's like his, like, middle tier evolution. So you choose Fujimori as your starting Pokemon.
He becomes Fuji
He
shock.
evolves into Fuji shock, and then he becomes
Pinochet. Which is what they call him later. That's what they call him later, dude.
All right, I love it.
Yeah, and he apparently loved that name.
Yeah, of course he did. It's clever as hell.
Yeah, so he immediately transitioned to austerity measures even more brutal than those he had earlier argued against, and the price of goods in the country skyrocketed. Gasoline, for instance, was raised by over 3,000%. So inflation was completely wiped out, but immediate layoffs in companies and hardships on the poor followed. So during his first 2 years in office, Fujimori did have difficulty passing a lot of his reforms because of Congress's hindrance. Fujimori had been told by the U.S. that in order for Peru to receive aid from the U.S. and to re-enter the international financial community, they must adopt, quote, relatively orthodox economic strategy.
So you're talking about U.S. Congress was hindering them, right?
What's that?
Well,
His Congress was.
Oh, okay.
But the U.S. State Department and the CIA were like, hey, man, we'll help you. But you have to institute, quote-unquote, relatively orthodox economic strategy, which just means suck our fucking dick.
Yeah, do
whatever
what
you
we want.
Our companies, our foreign capital can come in there and we will raid that entire fucking country for every cent it's got, but we'll give you a little bit of aid and some weapons so that you can hold on to power.
Right.
And that's what the U.S. means when they say do that.
Yeah, which is also like a baller move, and it's seemed to have worked for us many, many times.
It got us world hegemony.
Yeah, it's great.
Which is the thing that we had always, suggested that the Soviets were trying to do, and that's why we need to stop them.
Yeah.
Nah, that shit was us, man. That was all projection.
Dude, it's time and time again, we have just done the same thing over and over again. It just always works. And then, like, the couple times where it falls through, people are like, how could we have seen this coming? Like with Iraq, like, you know?
Well, I mean, I would argue that the point of Iraq was not to win. It was just to spend a bunch of taxpayer money.
Oh, but I mean, like, when it came to propping up I was about to say propping up bin Laden, because I'm just a fucking idiot. When it came to propping up Saddam Hussein.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And giving him a bunch of support.
He was our boy.
Yeah, we loved that dude. That dude fucking rocked. He was like, I'll literally go to war with Iran tomorrow if you guys give me a bunch of guns. And we were like, sounds like a fucking bargain. Like, absolutely.
And he was really good at killing communists. And
super good at it.
The U.S. loves that shit.
He was good at killing everybody.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. I don't want to give the wrong idea here. He was an objectively dog shit human being.
Yeah.
We just really liked him for a really long time.
Yeah, and then finally we were like, all right, now it actually makes sense.
Same with, like, the Taliban. Like, we were super pro-Taliban. Have you ever seen, is it Rambo 3? Where John Rambo goes to Afghanistan and, like, helps the Taliban fucking Mujahideen. Oh, it's so good. He goes and he literally joins the Taliban and helps them fight the Soviets.
That's awesome.
You know, they're like...
no, I did see that.
Yes, they're like the heroes of the movie, the Mujahideen.
Yeah, he's fighting Spetsnaz.
Yeah, and he blows up a helicopter with a bow and arrow. It rocks. Yeah. But it's just so funny, like, the way that the cultural narrative shifts as soon as, like, some power that we've propped up stops playing ball and is like... Then all of a sudden we, like, flip a switch and it's like, wow, they're really terrible. Look at all these human rights abuses. Like, we don't give a fuck about human rights abuses. We did it, like,
constantly with Gaddafi, too. It was like, first, Gaddafi's the worst thing on earth. Then, Gaddafi's the greatest thing on earth. And then, Gaddafi's the worst thing on earth again. Yeah. And the whole time, he's just kind of, like, doing his own thing.
He's doing the same thing.
Like, yeah. Like, anyway. So, at this point, the Partido Aprista Peruano, a socialist party, and the Frente Democrático, a liberal party, were both in control of Congress, and they tended to resist Fujimori's reforms. They were especially against the austerity measures that Fujimori tried to get passed. And so, on Sunday, the 5th of April, 1992, Fujimori began an autogolpe, or self-coup. So as president, Fujimori just dissolved Congress and used the military to help take control of the country in order to rewrite the Constitution and reorganize the judicial branch. So it's like, well, I'm at the top of government and you guys aren't doing what I want, so I'm just getting rid of you.
Yeah, I mean, that's we had a little brush with that ourselves this year.
Nah.
I don't think it was. I'm not saying it was, like, you know, as effective, and I definitely don't want to blow it out of proportion. But I think, given the opportunity, somebody might have taken that.
Although
chance.
I don't think that was in any way, shape, or form in any danger of anything happening.
No. I agree with you. I think that the response to it has been way blown out of proportion. But anyway,
spectacle. Yeah. Anyway, so former president and current senator Alan Garcia was nearly arrested in the coup, but he evaded capture and fled to Colombia. So after Fujimori dissolved Congress and assumed their powers, the Congress quickly acted to remove him from power and bring his vice president, Máximo San Roman, to power. But neither the people nor the military supported this move, so he never gained de facto power. In fact, Fujimori was extremely popular at the time, and his approval rating was over 80% after the coup.
Wow.
Yeah. So Peru was in dire straits at the time, and the belief was that there was nowhere to go but up for the country. While initially the global community rejected this maneuver, the U.S. was concerned about the Shining Path guerrillas still operating in Peru. So while they considered the coup drastic, they officially recognized Fujimori as president still with the Organization of American States.
I just wanted to ask, like, what? So you keep mentioning the Shining Path, and I have, like, a basic understanding of what they were, but can you just, like, give a super quick rundown of what the Shining Path were?
Yeah, so they were this Maoist communist group that was operating in the hills, and there were certain parts of Peru that, you know, throughout this time that they were gaining, like, legitimate control of. So they were a far-left communist organization, and they were militarized, so they were, like, actually conquering part. But one of the things that you'll notice in Latin and Central America, a lot of times these armed communist groups have the support of especially indigenous people in the countryside, people in the hills. But they were an organization that was led by this dude, Abimael Guzman, who was particularly charismatic, including Mao Zedong had this kind of thing where where it was called Zedong thought, like his various personal philosophies. There was Guzman thought with the Shining Path. So there was some cult of personality about their leader, but they're basically just like a militarized Maoist insurgency.
Gotcha.
Yep.
And the U.S. doesn't like that.
U.S. fucking hates that shit.
Yeah.
Unless you're the Khmer Rouge and then you support them and bankroll them.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, the Khmer. We'll have to do an episode on the Khmer Rouge.
Yeah. For sure.
But yeah, I mean, after everything that went down in Cuba in the 60s, late 50s and early 60s, I'm sure the U.S. was like, we will never let a grassroots communist insurgency succeed again.
Especially when they were our vassal state.
Yeah, when they're like right in our quote-unquote backyard.
Yeah, and when, we and the mafia in the country run all that shit.
We own them.
So anyway, so Fujimori was officially recognized by the Organization of American States. Now, if you don't know what the OAS is, it's essentially an arm of the U.S. State Department that was created in 1948, ostensibly to promote cooperation in the Western Hemisphere, but really it was created as a means for the U.S. to stave off communism in the West. You may be surprised to learn that the only American country not in the OAS is Cuba. So every other Western Hemisphere country is in it. This organization will continuously pop up from time to time throughout the series, and even now they quote-unquote monitor elections, but you may find the results less than satisfying.
Oh, I'm sure.
When we get into the Bolivia episode, they play a key role in that shit going down. So George H.W. Bush, Herbert Walker, old Poppy himself, ever the Cold Warrior, was more concerned about stopping the Shining Path and therefore recognized Fujimori because of Fujimori's opposition to the communist rebels. He doesn't care about undemocratic things, just like America doesn't. They're cool with you mass murdering your people as long as America gets its share, they get their beaks wet.
Yeah, as soon as you try to, nationalize American companies or just kick us out of the country because you think we're corrupt or whatever accurate assumption you make of America, that's when all of a sudden your human rights abuses and things like that start getting talked about. As long as you're towing the line, no one gives a fuck. America does not give a shit how you treat your people. I mean, we don't care how we fucking treat our own people.
Yeah, yeah, seriously. Like I said, the communist Khmer Rouge, every other communist hated them, and that's what led Vietnam to, depose the Khmer Rouge.
Yeah.
And then the United States was like, no, here's some money. And Margaret Thatcher was like, no, here's some money, and they put them back in power.
Yeah, man. Our boy Pol Pot.
They brought them right back up.
And you know what? You know what about Pol Pot? Another fucking school teacher. I'm telling you, man. They can't be trusted. Dude. Pol Pot. You know who else? Benito Mussolini. I'm telling you, I think teachers are the problem.
Yeah.
I'm going to come right out and say it, folks. You can quote me on this. I think teachers are the root of all evil.
Teachers are perverts.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Teaching is a pervert profession.
Stanky perverts, and I don't like them. They make me uncomfortable.
Yeah. So anyway, all of this poppy support paid off when Abael Guzman, the leader of the Shining Path, was captured in Lima at the end of 1992. He would be imprisoned for life and remains there today, and the CIA had apparently, quote-unquote, provided considerable assistance with the operations used against the communists.
Hell yeah.
This will take a very dark turn when you learn that a lot of these people weren't communists.
Right.
Another common thing.
What kind of assistance did they bring? Did they bring some of those pallets of the little 8-ounce bottles of water, or some energy bars or something? Or?
Yep, yeah, some of that. Some, guns, helping them move drugs to pay for guns.
And then any kind of snacks or anything like that?
Yeah, some ones good, that you don't want to eat.
Georgia peanuts and some really nice Texas brisket.
No, I think it was mostly shit to just kill.
Apples from the Green Mountains of Vermont.
No, don't think there were too many of those.
No.
Yeah, they're not soccer moms bringing snacks in minivans.
All right, kids, everybody take an orange slice.
Yeah.
Let's lick these communists.
Yeah. So
no, Billy, don't actually lick them.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So Fujimori would eventually call for new elections for Congress, and while some parties boycotted the election, many left parties did partake. However, Fujimori's allies and supporters won a majority of the seats, and a new constitution was drafted and was narrowly approved in a referendum. So General Jaime Salinas would attempt to lead a military coup against Fujimori in 1993, but he failed. Although some guy just decided to try and get involved. He said it was to try to depose him and bring back democracy, but there's basically only ever been one left-wing military coup, and that was the Carnation Revolution in Portugal. Maybe he was. Who knows? So finally, in 1994, Susanna Higuchi, Fujimori's wife, publicly denounced his rule and attempted to run against him in the 1995 elections. She was like, fuck this dude, I'm going to run against him. Although Fujimori had just previous to that passed a law prohibiting immediate relatives of the president from seeking office, and she was barred from entering the race. So Keiko Fujimori, Alberto's eldest daughter, became the new first lady.
Hell yeah, dude. I think, honestly, it's like every young girl's dream to get her mom fired and take her job. It's sort of like a pseudo-Oedipal complex, where it's just like, you know what, Mom, you don't support Dad enough. I'm going to be the first lady now.
Yeah.
It's kind of demented.
Yeah, this is pretty demented.
Yeah.
And speaking of demented, now my boy Vladimiro Montesinos enters the race, who was named, unbelievably, after Vladimir Ilyich Lenin. This dude's parents were communists, but he was like, no.
I don't want your life, Mom and Dad.
Yeah. No, so he becomes Fujimori's head of the secret police, and he began to infiltrate opposition parties with his teams of secret police and increase his own influence in the military. What followed were human rights abuses, such as illegal arrests, torture, and extrajudicial killings by death squads, along with rampant bribery of legislators, elected officials, media silencing, and embezzlement of government funds. Now, the crux of American involvement in Latin America, both during and since the Cold War, is the infamous death squads. Going through the countryside, killing in entire villages. They kill the local peoples, the Native Americans that still live there. And his group was pretty fucking terrible. So the vaunted anti-communist death squad is the vehicle by which the United States would repeatedly and successfully repel any nascent political movement in a country it was determined to not let communism succeed in. By this point, all that was needed were a few thousand deaths, as people knew just how far the United States and their anti-communist allies would go to keep their right-wing buddies in power. The worst was in Indonesia in the 1960s, when 500,000 to 1 million people were murdered by death squads and the anti-communist puppet U.S. government with direct aid and knowledge from Washington.
Rock and roll.
Something nobody fucking talks about.
Yeah, I don't know anything about that.
It is, the U.S. government directly trained the Indonesian right on how to just kill 1 million people in the country to stop it from turning communist.
Cool.
And the communists in Indonesia were unarmed.
It worked, right?
It absolutely worked,
Yeah,
and it worked
yeah.
for another 45 years.
Another win for Uncle Sam.
Yep.
Hell yeah, brother.
So among the crimes against humanity that occurred under Fujimori's reign was the Barrios Altos massacre, in which 15 people were killed by a death squad made up of Peruvian armed forces called Grupo Colina. While the intended targets were the Maoist Shining Path, the 15 killed included children, and they were all killed extrajudiciously. Congress was unable to investigate properly, as Fujimori's coup would take place shortly after. In the end, it was likely just a party that the death squad had mistaken for communists. So some people were having a birthday party,
I feel like
and they walk in, lined people up on the floor, and just melted them.
That I feel like there's a bit there, not to make light of the scenario, but the cops come in and they're like, "We've got strict orders to destroy the Communist Party in this region," and so they just start breaking up parties that they see, and so they're just like, "Oh man!" Although I think the words in Spanish are totally different, like fiesta and partido or whatever. Yeah. But still, the idea is funny. Man, Communist Party, huh? And it's just like a little kid's birthday party.
Yeah. Like a little kid named Capuano.
Right? Oh, God. All right.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So anyway, So he would run for re-election again in 1995, and he would win easily, garnering upwards of 60% of the vote, easily defeating the Field as he was at the height of his popularity. His next closest opponent was Javier Perez de Cuellar, the former Secretary General of the United Nations, and who contended the vote was tainted. So there had been clashes at this time between Peru and Ecuador at the border, and really was going on for many years, but especially in 1995. And finally, the two sides agreed on a ceasefire at their border dispute. At this point, however, Fujimori's popularity began to waver as his limitations on people's speech, the press, and his constant undermining of authority in other areas of the country led to his nickname becoming Chinoche, a combination of his former El Chino with the Chilean dictator Augusto Pinochet. Supposedly, Fujimori is fond of this nickname as he was a fan of the murderous Chilean fascist dictator.
Cool.
Yeah, he loved that shit, dude. So, although I will admit, this is pretty funny.
Yeah, I mean, Pinochet rocks. Like, that's a great nickname.
Yeah.
It playfully combines, like, fascism and racism.
Racism, yeah.
Two of
they
my
go
favorite.
hand in hand.
They're two of the best isms.
Yeah. Yeah, and one generally follows the other.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So, at this point, in fact, the country started paying more attention to Fujimori's regime, and mainly the criminal enterprise that had come about under Fujimori himself and Vladimir Montesinos, his head of secret police. This part was really tough to read about. Among the other atrocities from earlier, Fujimori had been mass sterilizing indigenous peoples, with up to 300,000 women being forced into sterility between 96 and 2000.
Jesus Christ.
For some of these people, he was promising them like goods and services and like supplies for their like dying villages, and then he would say, but you have to get sterilized first, and then just not following through, which is effectively at that point a genocide.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then in order to combat cocaine smuggling, Montesinos began shooting down suspicious planes if they did not comply with orders to land. So there's fucking knocking planes out of the air. And then it came out around the 2000 election that while Montesinos and Fujimori had claimed to have intercepted an arms shipment from Jordan to the communist rebel group FARC in Colombia, it was actually Montesinos that was responsible for the arms to get to FARC, and that Jordan had sold them to the Peruvian armed forces. So around the same time, video also leaked showing Montesinos bribing members of Congress for Fujimori. Now, having lost the support of the CIA, Montesinos would be arrested, and Fujimori would not successfully hold a third term, a position he was already illegally running for as there was a 2-term limit. There were elections and runoffs with mass irregularities suspected, but the scandal broke out at the end of all of this. So news had begun to trickle out that Fujimori and Montesinos were laundering money all around, and Switzerland began freezing accounts related to the two. And they were getting like tens of millions of dollars. Although still to this day, there's like nearly $1 billion of unaccounted for Peruvian government money that was never found.
Awesome. Awesome, dude.
Like they just had they had like accounts all over like Europe. Sometimes like 10 million here, 10 million there, 10 million. But they were never able to like figure out like the exact extent to their like criminal enterprise.
It is always all about the money for these guys.
Yeah.
Always.
I mean,
anytime you get somebody who's just like, I'm going to take power forever.
Yeah.
They are just doing it. That's like not a hot take or anything, but it's just, there's always some like vast hidden sum of money involved.
Yeah.
Just embezzled. I don't know. Anyway.
Dude, look at the Panama Papers that came out a few years ago.
Absolutely.
It came out that it was proven that literally every single powerful person on Earth, they were all dodging the same tax codes that they helped write, every single rich person on Earth.
Yeah.
And the only thing that came from it was that the journalist who leaked it died in a car bomb.
Yeah.
Like a year later. And nobody ever investigated any of it.
Yeah. It's just gonna,
they're all fucking implicated.
And so this takes us to like I think an important running point that we make, which is that there are conspiracies out there that are absolutely worth like investigating and believing in and being really, really afraid of.
Yeah.
Just not the ones that like get popular. Like, it's okay to get a vaccine, you know?
Yeah.
It's okay.
It's both okay to get a vaccine and also Bill Gates is not your fucking
Yeah,
friend.
no, right. Well, so that's the thing. Like, the COVID example, right? Like,
Yeah.
I've heard so many people trying to convince me like not to get a vaccine by saying like, well, the hospitals are fudging the numbers for insurance money, and like, you know, the vaccine manufacturers are all corrupt. And I'm like, well, yeah.
No shit.
Yeah, it doesn't mean they're selling a product that doesn't work. Like,
Yeah.
why not both? Like, why can't the medical care system in this country be totally corrupt and designed to hurt the citizenry, and also have a disease that's serious and bad?
Yeah.
Like, what vested interest would they have in letting us all die? We're worth so much money if we keep, if we stay alive, you know? Anyway, you're not going to just let all your livestock, you know, like a farmer's not going to let all of his cows die of plague. It doesn't mean he likes the cows, and it doesn't mean he's got their best interest at heart.
Yeah.
But he's not going to let them fucking die.
Yeah. Like, yeah, I mean, that's the thing. And, you know, it's, I feel like with a lot of conspiracy theories, you know, and for some of them, obviously they're just batshit. But then for some of them, it's also like, there's something there.
There's a grain of truth.
It's just a lot of the people and a lot of the ones that are pumped up because remember that term I talked about before, a limited hangout.
Sure.
Oh, the crazy parts of it, it's made to look like the entire thing's crazy when it's, oh no, you know, sometimes you're just missing that class analysis of it. And, you know, it's so funny, like, I'll see even, like, right-wing conspiracy theorists talk about how, like, evil pharmaceutical companies, like, you know, Pfizer and stuff like that, where there's, like, a vested interest in them creating a vaccine that's just good enough that you need to keep getting boosters because that's really good for the revenue streams. And that's, like, totally true.
Yeah,
but then they miss the point that it's, like, it's capitalism that's doing this.
Right. Right. The reason that is allowed to continue unchecked is because of the very systems that you've been convinced to support. Right? Like, so you hear like these QAnon conspiracy theorists and they're like, you can't trust the government. I'm like, okay, cool. I'm with you.
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah, there's too many like child rapists and pedophiles in places of power. I'm like, cool, awesome. Like, yeah,
we've had them as
I'm liking
president.
it so far. I'm liking it so far. And they're like, and they've got kids trapped under the pizza place in Washington, and there's mole people under the Capitol. And I'm like, all right, so
no,
you're losing me. You're right.
Yeah.
Like back to the other thing, and then they've moved on, and it's all about like the Great Awakening and you know, Jesus, and they start mixing it with all this dumb stuff, and it's like, nah, man, let's rewind to like.
The part that we've had presidents who were absolutely implicated in child sex trafficking rings.
You
like
know,
Bill Clinton.
Jeffrey Epstein's got some names on that list, man.
Yeah.
But they never want to settle for like the real.
Yeah.
It's just, you know what? Because it's not as exciting. Everybody's so. Everybody. I just feel like everybody's programmed to expect like the action movie solution to their problems, or like the reasoning behind things has to be this like exciting espionage filled, you know, black ops war behind the scenes between
as opposed to just like the mundaneness of evil.
Yeah, it's just it's just money.
Yeah,
it's just
and
money.
Also like and like the big one too. Like you'll hear these people talk about like crony capitalism. And it's like, no, that's just capitalism.
Yeah, that's just capitalism.
That's just how it unfolds.
Yeah.
It will always unfold like
capitalism unchecked will always lead to cronyism because that's just the way that it works. That's why
that is how it works. So it's
the thing that I love too, and this will be my last sort of tangential point here, is when people point to things like. You know, okay, so like industry's shutting down due to COVID, right? And people point to it and they're like, this is what life under socialism would be like. And you're like, no,
it's like,
this is life under
now.
capitalism right now. Like we are a capitalist country and that's happening right now because we can't get our shit together long enough. If this was a socialist country, everything would have been shut the fuck down and no one would have gotten sick and everything would have been fine.
Or my favorite one too is when people like, they show pictures of like where you order like your food yourself at a restaurant or like self checkout and they're like, this is what will happen if the minimum wage is $15 an hour. It's like, that's what it is at $7.25.
Right.
That's it now, you fuck. Like, what are you talking about?
And another last thing that I'm super, super upset about is that Adolf Hitler, you know, decided to include the word socialist in the name of his party. Well, and I mean, he admitted to doing that. Yeah, he admitted to doing that. I mean, there's a record. He did that just to fucking fool people.
Yeah.
And he hated socialists. And nothing about the Nazi Party was socialist. But now you say you're a socialist, and these fucking right-wingers are like, oh, like the Nazis, National Socialists. Read a fucking book.
Dude, it's like the people, the second most killed people in the fucking Holocaust.
Socialists!
They were communists!
Unbelievable.
It's so, like, there were 5 million people that weren't Jews that were killed in the Holocaust, and a lot of those were just communists.
Yeah. Yeah.
So anyway, so Fujimori at this point, after, realizing that his empire was crumbling, he suddenly appears in Japan, because he actually has citizenship there. Mm-hmm. And then he mails in his resignation as president of Peru.
That's such a bitch move.
I know, dude. Just, like, going out like a fucking bitch, man. Yeah. And Congress was like, no, the fuck you don't resign. Like, no, you don't.
Yeah.
Like, we want your ass here, man. And so a criminal case was opened against him. And eventually, Interpol issued arrest warrants for Fujimori due to his various crimes against humanity. He was eventually captured and arrested and sentenced to prison for his multitude of crimes. Including the forced sterilizations, the death squads, the imprisonment of journalists, and corruption. He was sentenced to 25 years in prison. It was Peruvian law that all the sentences are consecutively served. Concurrently served, not consecutively. And so he was only sentenced to 25 years, and while the former president, here's one of those other names I really like, Pedro Pablo Kuczynski, pardoned him. He was ordered back to prison by the Supreme Court. This was like a few years ago.
Yeah.
He was ordered back to prison by the Supreme Court of Peru, and the pardon was annulled. There were some suggestions that it was a little pay-for-play scheme, where Pedro Pablo Kuczynski was going to be in his own trouble.
Right.
And the Fuerza Popular was like, well, if you pardon Alberto,
we might be able to dig up some of those lost millions.
Yeah, we got $1 billion somewhere, man.
So I missed the part here, and I don't know if I think we kind of glossed over it. So he shows up in Japan.
Yeah.
Right? And that's a natural move because he probably has Japanese citizenship.
Yeah, he does, yep.
And he's fluent in Japanese, and he looks Japanese, and so he's like, I'll just disappear.
Well, Japan knows who he is.
Yeah, but he's just like, whatever, I'll just like be Japanese now.
Yeah.
I tried the Peruvian thing. No, let's try Japan. Yeah. But and then Peru said, we want you home. Yeah, did they like send people to get him? Did Japan extradite him?
I believe at the time, so I kind of like skipped over this part a bit because it was kind of confusing where I was reading. But it seems like he was skipping around a bit and that like Japan didn't want to extradite him at first, I don't think.
Yeah. I think Japan is usually pretty reluctant to extradite citizens.
It was, but then like once
they would extradite someone to us, but Peru, it's like, fuck Peru. I'm not sending somebody to Peru. No, that's not me saying that, that's
But I believe it was once Interpol got involved.
Right.
And, like the entire global community was. I'm sure the United States was kind of leaning on them a bit too.
Yeah.
And finally, it was just like that was the end. So he's still alive today. He's fucking old as shit. I watched like a recent court thing where he like went in there trying to argue for humanitarian reasons to be let go, and the Supreme Court of Peru was just like, dude, fuck off, man. But yeah. So anyway, this prick's daughter might be the next president of Peru.
Damn, I love it.
And dude, she's a character in her own right. Not to make fun of how somebody looks, but she looks like a fucking goofy idiot.
I'm looking at Alberto right now.
Yeah.
He's 82.
Yeah.
He seems like he looks pretty healthy though. He looks like
he does. Yeah. Yeah, he's not looking like emaciated or anything like that. They're trying to say that he's like in poor health, but like he looked fine.
Yeah. Yeah, he looks good. I'm trying to see Keiko Fujimori. There's a lot of unflattering photographs of her.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's probably by design.
Yeah, she's got like a very doofy smile on her face a lot of the time. Except she's like a fascist, so I don't really care. I'll make fun of her.
Yeah, we don't like that. We don't want Keiko to win.
Yeah.
The other guy sounds like he's kind of a dingbat too.
Yeah, he's kind of an asshole too.
It's
so
not like
just
we've got like two great choices in Peru right
it's
now.
like
but
it's cool that he's a socialist, but he's like opposes same-sex marriage.
yeah, he's got some serious. There's some serious
Kind of a
humanitarian
chauvinist
issues there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He even opposes like in the case of like incest and rape, he still doesn't believe in abortion.
Wow.
So it's like he
Yeah.
seems like an asshole too.
Yeah, he's an asshole. I don't like
So I
that.
guess-
Left
so I
Unread
guess-
does not endorse Pedro Castillo.
Well,
okay.
I guess we give him critical support. We give him critical support. We support him over Keiko, but we will criticize him.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess.
But he doesn't get like a big left on red up.
Yeah, we're not gonna send him.
We're leaving him on red.
The official. We're not going to be the official podcast of the what are they called? Peru Libre.
Yeah. So, well, no, the rest of the party isn't like him. He's like specifically socially conservative, where the rest isn't. So he's even said he was like, I'm at the head of the party. So
He's like a Joe.
rule
He's like
how
a
I
Joe
want.
Manchin.
Yeah, I mean, but Joe Manchin plays a particular role for.
Yeah, I know. Joe Manchin is the
He
new.
plays the part that
the
Joe
new Joe
used to
Lieberman.
play. Yeah.
Yeah, he's the scapegoat. Anyway.
Yeah.
I keep taking us off on these wild tangents.
Yeah, so for Pedro Castillo, we're going to open the text, but we are leaving him on red.
Yes. Yes. Pedro Castillo has been left unread
Yeah.
by Left Unread.
Yeah, we have opened the text, though.
But we've opened it.
Yeah.
Wow, man, that was awesome. Thanks for that.
Yeah.
I liked it.
Next time, I'll get back into History of the Kings of Britain, finish that shit off, and then we'll do Bolivia.
Yep. And I've got a fun episode planned for next week. We're going to do our first natural history episode talking about aminals. Because who doesn't like fluffy...
Bigfoot.
Yeah, we're doing an episode on the history of the Loch Ness Monster. No, actually, that'd be cool to do some of that shit sometime. But no, we're gonna talk about wolves next week. Wolves in Yellowstone National Park.
Yep.
All right. Well, unless
So
you've got
thanks for
anything to
tuning in.
add, yeah.
Yeah, no, thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed it, 5-star rating. Only 5-star. Do not give it 4. Do not give it 3. Only 5-star on iTunes. Please tell your friends about us. If you have some pervert friend that you want to give like a really bad recommend to, tell them to listen to us. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that's about it.
Absolutely. Viva Peru.
Yeah. Yep. All right. So thanks for tuning in, y'all.
Later.
Peace.